Welcome to CKLA, Unit 2, Lesson 6 of Skills. Today we're going to read some words with some different spellings for the ow sound. Make the ow sound. We're also going to draft a piece of writing. So yesterday we talked about the story elements in the milk. Today we're going to draft some writing or a fictional narrative discussing the milk. So be sure that you have your page 31 that we did yesterday for the end of our lesson today. Now remember, the vowel sounds are the parts of the words emphasized when we sing. So when you open your mouth, when you say a word, those syllables, like when we say the word writing, you open your mouth with that vowel sound I. So it's kind of like you hear that singing. You open your mouth. Ah, make the ah sound. Mouth's open, right? Eh, mouth is open. Eh, your mouth is open. Ah, make that sound. Your mouth is open, right? Uh, uh, your mouth is still open. So every time you hear those vowel sounds, you open your mouth. So it's like a beat. So that's your syllables. The sound that you will learn today is the ow sound. Make the ow sound. Ow. So take some time now to think of words that have the ow sound in them. Can you think of a word that has the ow sound in it? Mouth, power. These are some different words with the ow sound. In first grade, you learned a spelling for this sound ow. Let's review it. This vowel sound is ow, like in the word shout. O-U, make the ow sound. Now we're going to learn a new spelling for this sound. The new spelling is O-W. You may have seen this before, but the new spelling for ow is O-W. This word is now. Make the ow sound. Ow. What two letters are we using today to make the ow sound? O-W. Good. Now let's read words with these spellings, these O-W ow sounds. Down, town, growling, howling, frowning, flowers, showers. Now remember your O-W, what sound does it make? Ow. Great job. Now let's move to our writing block. We are going to be writing a fictional narrative, and today we're going to focus on the drafting process. So this is going to be a retelling of a story, a fake story. So we're going to retell the story in our own words using those story elements that we discussed yesterday. So today when we're writing things down, we're going to draft. We're going to kind of put our thoughts on paper. And remember your steps to the writing process. Read these steps with me. Plan, draft, edit, publish. Now planning is your first step. And yesterday we planned. We thought about our story. We looked at the different elements in the story, the milk. So let's kind of take a minute to review our planning page from yesterday. Our main character in the story was Jane. She had those big dreams and plans for that bucket of milk. The story took place a long time ago. It was outside, and she was on a farm and a road. We know she was on a farm because she talked about those farm animals. And she had that bucket of milk. Now your plot. The beginning, she had the milk in the bucket. She was going to go sell the milk out of the bucket, right? In the middle of the story, she's thinking of all those things she can buy with the money she's going to make off the bucket of milk. She kind of got in a hurry, right? She was trying to spend her money before she got her money. At the end, she spilled the milk. She didn't get the cash. She learned, I can't spend my money before I get it. So that plan that she had kind of changed a little bit, didn't it? Today we're going to use our planning page to help us create a draft for the story, The Milk. Today we will write a draft in a paragraph format, and we will basically be talking about the story, The Milk. So we're going to write a paragraph about the story as if the person that reads our paragraph has never read The Milk before. So we're kind of retelling in our own words what happened in the story, The Milk. Now let's think about a title. Would we want to title our paragraph The Milk? We could, couldn't we? Because aren't we talking about the milk in our paragraph? Okay, so let's write a title at the top of our page. So find that blank sheet of notebook paper and let's title it The Milk. On my sheet of notebook paper, I have picked a title. The title has to have something to do with what you're writing about. So you may be a little more creative and come up with a different title, or you can use my title. The title is The Milk. So you see how we've kind of organized our paper, putting our title at the top like they would in a book or in a story that we would read in our workbooks. So go ahead right now and title your story The Milk, or whatever creative title you have come up with to talk about the milk. Now notice the holes on your paper are on the left side. The left side has the holes in that red line. We don't write on the left side of that red line. We only number our paper on the left side of that red line. So we're going to construct a paragraph. Now, when we write our paragraph with our draft, we can number our paragraph. We can number our thoughts. We can kind of put it together like a list. It doesn't have to be a good, complete paragraph because when we edit it and we go through the next process, we'll make it that good, healthy paragraph. So go ahead and title your story. Now let's think about a starting sentence. This should introduce the characters and the setting. So you're telling the reader basically who and where this story is going to take place. Like who's in the story, where and when it's going to take place. So that kind of helps the reader start thinking about the main part of the story. So think about how we could start our paragraph. You can see here in my topic sentence, I've told you about the main character who is Jane. I've mentioned her name. She was hopeful. She had those big plans, didn't she? So it's kind of introducing the reader to Jane a little bit. She's a hopeful girl. She lived in a farm long ago, or on a farm long ago. So you're telling a little bit about the who and the where and when the story took place. So go ahead and come up with you a sentence for your starting sentence, but make sure you put the characters and the setting in your starting sentence. I numbered my starting sentence with a 1. When I write my final paragraph, I'm not going to number my sentences because if you notice when you read a story, each sentence is not numbered. But just as our draft, you can number your sentences just in case we want to change something at the end with the order. Now let's brainstorm ideas for a topic sentence for this paragraph. So start thinking in your head, put some ideas in your head about how you could start your topic sentence. What was the first big thing in this story? Now you can see that I've labeled my topic sentence with a 2 because it's going to be my second sentence in my paragraph. So I've got my starter sentence kind of introducing who and where and when. Now we've got that topic sentence that's going to tell us basically that big first event that opens up our story. And you know, Jane, she was hopeful. She wanted to buy lots of things after she sold that bucket of milk from the farm, didn't she? And that kind of led into the other event. So your event or your topic sentence may be a little different, but it should talk about Jane and how she has this bucket of milk that she's planning on selling. So you've got to introduce your reader to the events that are fixing to happen. You may change your sentence a little bit. It may not be exactly like mine, but you still have to have that same type of information in there. Now, I numbered it with a number 2, but remember, in our paragraph, we don't number our sentences, only in a draft. When we write in a complete paragraph or in a good, healthy paragraph, we often use these temporal words or these sequential words, these words that tell when things happen, like first, then, next, last. They help the reader to follow what we're writing, to it kind of is a guide that tells them when things happened. Next, we're going to create and write sentences that provide some supporting details for the topic sentence. So when you make that statement, that topic sentence, it's kind of like the top of your table. So your supporting details are going to be your legs to your table. They kind of hold it up. So, Jane was really focused on how she was going to spend all the money from the bucket of milk. So think about all those things that the author told you that helped you know that she was planning all those things. So I'm going to start jotting these things down on paper. And on the next slide, I want you to kind of compare what you have written to what I have written. Now remember, this is a rough draft. So this is a draft. This is us thinking on paper. Now I've taken the events that happened as she was thinking about selling that bucket of milk. Those things that she wanted to buy, those were her planning process for spending that money before she got it, right? So it kind of developed our lesson. So I took 3 of our items that she was wanting to buy, or 3 of those plans that she had thought about, and I listed them as my supporting details. Because as you read the story, the author kind of developed that lesson by telling you all those things that she wanted to buy before she made her money. So you can use my supporting details, or you can reword them in your own writing. But notice that I use those sequence words, those temporal words, first, then, next. So I've used those to kind of help the reader remember or to know those things that she wanted to buy in that order. So you can pause the video if you need to. So if you need to pause the video and go back and make sure you have your starter sentence, your topic sentence, and some supporting details. Now I listed 3 supporting details, but your supporting details, you don't have to have a certain amount. Usually a good healthy paragraph is around 5 to 8 sentences. So as long as you have some supporting details that help you to understand or kind of develop that topic sentence, that was her planning to spend that money after she sold the milk. So as long as you're developing that topic sentence, you don't have to have exactly 3 supporting details. So take some time now if you need to go back and catch up on your paragraph. Make sure you get your starter sentence, your topic sentence, and your supporting details. Next, we're going to read our paragraph aloud to make sure that it makes sense. Numbers. I erased my numbers on my draft. Now, when you write a paragraph, this is what a well-written paragraph should look like. You can see that top line has an indent in it. You've kind of scooted that first line over a little bit. That tells the reader that we're starting a new paragraph. So pay attention when you're reading stories, how those paragraphs are kind of laid out, that indentation in that first line of the paragraph. Okay, so our paragraph, I've erased our numbers, and this is what a more formal paragraph will look like when we finish the process. Now let's read mine. You guys read mine with me. We're going to read it aloud and make sure that it makes sense. Jane was a hopeful girl who lived on a farm long ago. Jane was hopeful of the things that she could buy after selling a bucket of milk from the farm. First, she wanted to buy a hen. Then, she wanted to buy a pig. Next, she wanted to buy a dress. Now you notice as I'm rereading that paragraph, this is that time with your draft. If something doesn't make sense, this is when I need to start thinking, okay, I need to change some things on this paragraph. If it doesn't make sense to me, then it's not going to make sense to the reader. Now, if you wrote a different paragraph or you brainstormed some different ideas, read those things aloud now and make sure that they make sense. You may pause the video if you need some extra time. Now, good paragraphs come with a concluding sentence. So that concluding sentence wraps things up and often restates the topic. So that first sentence that we wrote where we pretty much kind of told the reader what they were going to be reading about, it's where we repeat that topic sentence. We may change it a little bit, but that's our conclusion. Think of some good ideas for a concluding sentence for this paragraph. How can we retell the reader what the topic of our paragraph is one more time? Think of some now, and then we're going to add some to our paper on the next slide. Now, your concluding sentence. This is where you end your story. So we may have to go back and retell what our story was about when we conclude our paragraph. When Jane tripped and dropped the milk, she learned that you can't spend your money before it's earned. So here we're ending our paragraph. We're talking about how Jane's lesson is learned at the end. If you wanted to add a little something extra about Jane being hopeful in there, you're kind of repeating that topic sentence. She was hopeful the whole story until she learned that lesson that you can't spend your money before it's earned. So go ahead and add you a concluding sentence to your paragraph now. Now you can number these sentences because remember, this is just a draft. Now in today's lesson, I'm going to show you how to edit your draft that we did yesterday. So take just a minute and pause the video and take out your draft from yesterday's writing on the milk. Now yesterday we had our draft for our paragraph, the milk. Now if you did not write it into paragraph form yesterday on a separate sheet of paper, then you need to do that now. Now I'm going to put a picture of my draft with my paragraph. Now this is going to be my final draft, so it's still a draft, but it's going to be in a paragraph form. So after I put my numbers on it, I went back, I reread it, I decided if that was the order that I wanted to keep it in, if it flowed well and made sense, and then I wrote it into a paragraph without my numbers. So I organized my thoughts, made sure that they flowed the way I wanted them to, make sure that I had complete sentences, and I rewrote it into a paragraph. So I'm going to show you my paragraph now. If you need to pause the video and rewrite your paragraph, you can do that on the bottom of your sheet of paper, on the back, or on a new sheet of paper. But make sure you have your paragraph rewritten. Now here is yesterday's paragraph rewritten. We took our numbers off. We've got our sentences complete and flowing. We've got our opening sentence, our starter, and we've got our concluding sentence. We've used those temporal words, those sequential words, first, then, next. We've got a good flowing paragraph. Make sure on the top line you indent to show the reader it's a new paragraph. Let's review our writing process. First, we plan. Next, we draft. Then we edit, which is what we'll do today. And last, we publish. We put it out there for people to read. Now, the editing process is very important. That's when we take what we have written in our draft and we try to make it better. Even professional writers don't write perfect the first time. They have to go back and edit their work. Editing makes our writing better. That's where we look and make sure that our sentences are good and complete, our paragraph flows well, and the reader can understand it easily. Now we're going to practice editing a draft as a class. This is not the draft that we worked on as a class, but one that appeared like magic overnight. Say hello to Mr. Mouse. Even though OU and OW have the same sound, Mr. Mouse spells mouse differently. You're going to help me edit Mr. Mouse's writing. Today's draft is from Mr. Mouse. Sometimes Mr. Mouse sneaks in and listens to our class while we write and while we learn how to write. He's shy, so he waits for everyone to go home before he writes. So we're going to take Mr. Mouse's writing and we're going to edit it together. Now let's read Mr. Mouse's draft and help him edit it. You can see here that Mr. Mouse has started to write about the milk. So when he brainstormed about his story, The Milk, these are the things that he came up with. You see some spelling errors. When you reread the sentences, you notice there's no end marks. So when you're reading it to correct it for editing, you have to figure out where you're going to put those end marks. Now take a second to reread Mr. Mouse's paragraph. So pause the video and see if you can read the paragraph aloud. Now that you have decoded the paragraph, let's read it together. What's Mr. Mouse's title? He titled his paragraph the same as ours. He titled it The Milk. Now notice he doesn't have our title capitalized. In a title, you have to capitalize the first letter and all of the important words. So we need to capitalize the T in the milk. There was a lass named Jane. She took a bucket of milk to sell. Jane fell down. She wanted to go buy a dress. She wanted to get a pig. Jane was sad. The end. And you notice that there's lots of spelling mistakes and there's end marks that need to be added. So let's try to correct some of those. On the next slide, you're going to see some corrections that we've made through our editing. So this might be where you mark it out on your original draft and you change the spelling. Now we've made some corrections. We've capitalized our first letter to our sentences. We fixed our spelling. What are we missing here? We're still missing something else. What are we missing? Yes, we're missing our end marks. Now, does this look like a paragraph in paragraph format? Did Mr. Mouse indent his first line? No, so we need to write a few more things. We're still not finished correcting. So when you read this out loud, when you stop at a complete thought, you've got to add that end mark to it. Now the next slide is going to be Mr. Mouse's final editing draft. So this will be our paragraph that we have edited, read aloud, and we've added some things to it. Because think about what Mr. Mouse is writing. Does Mr. Mouse really tell you what the problem of the story is? He tells you that Jane fell down. But did Jane falling down, was that her only problem? Why was Jane sad? Did Mr. Mouse give you enough detail in here to tell you why Jane was sad? Was the bucket of milk mentioned? No, the bucket of milk was a big part of the story that's not mentioned in Mr. Mouse's paragraph. So we're going to need to add some things to Mr. Mouse's paragraph, some supporting details to make sure that we develop our main idea. Okay, so the next slide is going to be Mr. Mouse's final edited draft. Now let's look at our changes that we've made to Mr. Mouse's paragraph on the milk. We've taken his first sentence, his starter sentence, and we've indented it. He had a really good starter sentence. There was a lass named Jane. Now think about the word lass. We talked about it in one of our stories. A lass would be something from the old times, like in a country or a village. Most it doesn't come from our country, so we know that it's abroad. There was a lass named Jane. We put our period at the end of our sentence, capitalized our T in there. Jane fell down on her way to sell a bucket of milk. Okay, so we added a little bit. We didn't just say that Jane fell down. We added that bucket of milk in there. Jane could not buy the things she wanted. Now, we need to know that Jane wanted lots of things. She had big plans. She couldn't buy those things she wanted because she spilled that milk. Jane was sad when she learned that she can't spend money that is not yet earned. So Mr. Mouse, he kind of forgot to tell why she was sad. So that bucket of milk, she spilled that bucket of milk. We got to add in there that lesson that she learned. So this would be a good complete paragraph that Mr. Mouse could end with. So when you reread your paragraph, read it out loud and make sure that it makes sense. If you don't understand something and you don't understand what you wrote or can't read what you wrote, then you need to fix it where it makes sense. That's part of the drafting process. Now make sure that you have your paragraph drafted and edited. So you have drafted it and now you are going to change it and edit it. Make sure that it's a complete, good, healthy paragraph. So when you rewrite your paragraph, you're going to rewrite it neatly. You're going to make sure that your sentences are complete. Make sure that they make sense, that they're in a certain order, a sequential order in which it happens in the story. Read it out loud. Make sure it flows. You're going to make sure that your spelling is correct. Have someone read it at home. Have someone read it out loud. Edit your paragraph. Make sure that you have your paragraph freshly written and you're ready to do the next step, which is publish it. So let's review our writing process one more time. We had a plan. So we kind of brainstormed those story elements of the milk. We drafted those ideas on paper. And now we're editing it. So like Mr. Mouse, we're going to write that good, healthy paragraph with all of our ideas. So the next step is to publish it. Now let's review our learning targets for the day. We read words that were spelled with that ow sound. And what letters do we use to make the ow sound today? Good, we used the OW. And we came up with a draft for our writing on the story, The Milk. So we've got our rough draft. We've got our beginning process. We planned and then we drafted our piece of writing. We will see you tomorrow and we will be putting this draft and editing it, and we will be putting it into our final stages.